In the days before the election, we saw lots of reports of storekeepers around America boarding up their stores, protecting their plate glass windows in anticipation of riots. Okay, let me be a little bit more accurate, though. There were storekeepers in Democrat-run cities like New York and Washington, D.C. Those were the places that were boarding up their stores, places where riots are politically acceptable, places where Democrats throw riot tantrums if they don't get their way, and Democrat politicians allow it. But I get it. The Democrats had a summer of street riots. What if the election result were so close and their guy just barely lost and thought it was unfair? What if the final conclusive results weren't clear and the country was in a state of limbo? Of course, that's exactly what happened, except that it's 70 million Republicans who feel cheated, 70 million, but everyone knows they don't riot. They just don't. There just hasn't been any riots. So the shopkeepers know it's safe to take down the boards. And the media knows it's safe too. They were hoping for riots if the Republican won. I mean, these were the folks who talked about mostly peaceful riots this summer.
Christine, Laura, what you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin over the course of the night. A second night since Jacob Blake was seen shot in the back 7 times by a police officer. And what you are seeing now, these images came and come in stark contrast to what we saw over the course of the daytime hours in Kenosha and into the early evening, which were largely peaceful demonstrations in the face of law enforcement.
I saw Gerald Butts' new boss, Ian Bremmer, the guy who gave him a soft landing in New York after Butts was kicked out of Trudeau's office in disgrace. He wrote, "Now is the time for every Biden supporter to reach out to one person who voted for Trump. Empathize with them. Tell them you know how they feel. You do from 2016. Come up with one issue you can agree on." Thanks, Dad. Now, I actually don't think Ian Bremmer knows anyone who voted for Trump. Doesn't know them well, at least. I mean, he probably has a name or two in his Rolodex, but I don't think he has any conservative friends. It's like that book I told you about the other day, Coming Apart, by Charles Murray, that talks about the great divide in America. Do you know anyone who is an evangelical Christian? Are you friends with someone with whom you vigorously disagree about substantive things? Have you ever been on a factory floor? Have you ever lived in a small town for a year or more that wasn't a college town, etc.? You're not evil if the answer to all of that is no. You're just disconnected from the other half, from the 70 million people who voted for Trump and do not feel like Hillary Clinton supporters. Hillary Clinton supporters were upset because their candidate and their party lost in 2016. It's true. That is upsetting, but that happens to half the country every election. That is normal. That's the feeling of losing. Trump voters are feeling something more than losing. They're feeling something being stolen. If you lose your wallet, if you drop it, if you left it somewhere, if you misplaced it, you're frustrated and you're upset. But if you didn't lose it, if it was actually stolen from you, that is a completely different feeling. A stolen wallet is a grievous offense against you. It's morally unacceptable to you. You need justice. Losing a wallet is your own foolishness. Maybe you blame yourself, but having it stolen, that is unjust. And look, that's just a wallet, a few dollars, some ID cards, more hassle than anything. But losing an election, a momentous election, not losing, having it stolen. Hillary Clinton could never claim it was stolen from her. I mean, she lost Wisconsin. She did misplace it. She never campaigned there in the general election. I mean, sure, she claimed Russia stole it from her, but there was never any evidence of that. It was obvious she never really meant it, and neither did her party, and neither did the media. It was just a way of her avoiding responsibility. It was a way of her attacking Donald Trump with her own sins. She sold the Secretary of State's job to the highest bidder. The Clinton Foundation is taking tens of millions of dollars from foreign countries. Donald Trump didn't raise foreign money for his campaign. He wasn't submissive to foreign powers. The Democrats are clever enough to accuse their opponents of their own sins. And if you're trying to convince 70 million Americans that the election was not, in fact, rigged, I can think of nothing more counterproductive than to censor any legitimate questions about the election and its fairness. Yet look online. Look at how Twitter, for example, censors Trump's tweets about the election and its anomalies and its legal recounts, censoring more than half his comments. Are you trying to convince people it wasn't rigged by interfering with legitimate questions about the rigging? By telling the president what he can or can't say about his own campaign? It's insane. It's madness. Yeah, sorry, Ian, but your very question shows you have no clue. But it wasn't about reaching out. It was about showing his own tribe how magnanimous he is. Do you think he knows a single MAGA hat-wearing American? I know he mocks those in flyover country. Here's a Twitter exchange between him and Gerald Butts making fun of Republicans as, really terrorists, American ISIS or whatever. So, he's just lying. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.